I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this evening. You know what day this is, don't you? It's the first day of spring, right? So that's why we're all here. Well, tonight we're going to talk about problem gambling. No one wins. So we're going to have kind of two parts to this tonight. I'm going to talk on the clinical side of things, and then we have a special guest here, Peter Harrington, right here, and he's going to share his story about his gambling experiences and how it's affected his life. And I think we're all going to be really get a lot of good information out of his talk and his sharing his experience. And then after that, if people want to hang around, we're going to have some questions and answers, and we'll be around to talk. My name is Mark Bombara, and I'm a outpatient behavioral health therapist at Holland Hospital. And just a little blurb about our services. We have a outpatient clinic down the road here, and we have a full inpatient state-of-the-art center up on the 6th floor here. We have a full staff of psychiatrists and therapists, psychologists, licensed social workers. We have adult services, we have child and adolescent services, and we have, I believe, 5 psychiatrists. 2 are child and adolescent. We have an addictions psychiatrist. And we serve the full spectrum of ages. And we also have substance abuse services as well as general mental health services. And we do offer an intensive outpatient social program for substance abuse and addictions. And I have been working the last year and a half with the Department of Community Health, which sponsors and pays for a gambling treatment, prevention and treatment services that are, guess what? Guess what they're paid for by? The 2% of the proceeds from the lottery, the slot machines, and all of that. So we're here tonight because the state has to have that money for prevention and treatment. About 2 years ago, I went through a training program through the state, and it's administered by the Health Management Systems of America. They have the contract with the state to provide the training and provide the infrastructure for this the gambling treatment program, and then they house the hotline. So there's a 24/7 hotline that people can call from anywhere where they are, and often they call right from the casino floor after they've lost a lot of money. And these counselors on the phone are just fantastic, and they'll spend however long they need to spend on the phone with somebody to help them through a crisis and to help them get the treatment that they need. And so I am one of the paneled providers through the state. And the state, I think right now, there might be about 50 or less of us spread out through the state. And there's 83 counties, and I think there's only like 19 or 20 or in the low 20s of counties that have a paneled provider like myself. So much of the state, many of the, of course up the UP, there's not many gambling paneled providers like myself. I'm the only one in Ottawa and Allegan. So there's maybe a couple or 3 in Kent County, maybe 1 in Muskegon. So there's not a lot of paneled providers. So what they do here is they try to give the person on the phone some resources. Number one, they tell them where the closest GA meeting is, which is Gamblers Anonymous, and they try to hook them up with Gamblers Anonymous, and then they try to refer them to treatment provider like myself that lives closest to them. And since I've been doing this, I've been seeing people from, I even have a person now coming in from Muskegon, but in Ottawa and both Allegan counties. And I don't know the exact numbers, but we think that there's about 4,000 calls a year or more. And then of those, there's probably under 1,000 to 600 to 1,000 maybe that actually follow through and get services. So this is a hard population to work with because, you know, one minute they're losing and they're going through this downward spiral, but then maybe the next day, no, they don't want to make an appointment. So they're very hard to engage. All right. This is the website on the Michigan.gov, Michigan Department of Community Health website, and I think it's www.gambleresponsibly.com, but I do have it on some handouts in the back too. So, and has anybody seen these ads on TV? Oh, they have about 5 of them, and they're really quite hard-hitting ads. But you can go there and get a lot of information. So the helpline is strictly confidential, like I said, and they provide referrals to support groups like GA, and they also have a speakers bureau where anybody like myself, they can send out anywheres to speak at any organization, and they underwrite that. So people are going all out throughout the state, speaking in different facilities or different places that would like to have a speaker talk about problem gambling. So just a little historical perspective on gambling. In 1978, only 2 states had legalized casino gambling. Could you know what states? Nevada. Yep, Nevada, and my home state where I was born, it's New Jersey. So, the National Gambling Impact Study found that 86% of Americans report having gambled at least once in their lives. Okay. 68% of Americans report having gambled in the last year. Okay. Now, these statistics are going up all the time, of course. And today, it's a $95 billion industry a year. And what do you think? I was just looking on the internet last night at Governor Snyder's new budget for the next budget year. How much do you think the budget is for the next fiscal year in the state of Michigan? It's $51 billion. So legalized gambling is almost twice as much grossing than the budget of the state of Michigan. I don't know if that helps put it in perspective. So today, all but 2 states have some form of legalized gambling. The only 2 states that don't are Hawaii and Utah. Here's a little quote from Albert Einstein. You cannot beat a roulette table unless you steal money from it. And he was a pretty smart guy, wasn't he? Okay. And he was a mathematician. So he knew the odds were not in favor of the person playing. Always the house. Here's a map of all of the casinos in the United States. Okay. And of course, as you can see, the darker it is, the more casinos are in that area. Now look at it, Nevada, there's over 20 casinos just in that area, in that dark area. So you can see the concentration here, and there's New Jersey over here. Of course, there's Las Vegas of the east is Atlantic City. But you can see here in Michigan, they're starting to get, and here's the Upper Peninsula. It's almost every county in the Upper Peninsula has a casino in it. But here's Detroit, and we're right over here. So how many casinos are within an hour of here, an hour and a half of here? At least 5, right? Well, statistics tell us that there are approximately the problem gambling rate goes up by 50% when a casino comes into an area and you're within 60 miles of it. So just being in the proximity of a casino of an hour and a half, the problem gambling goes up 50%. Just a little, you heard the saying, you know, what happens somewhere stays somewheres, you know. What happens here today stays here. Well, what do you think happens in, what happens in Las Vegas doesn't stay in Las Vegas, it goes everywhere else. And that's what's happened here. So we have the proliferation of casinos and gambling going all over the country. And I don't think it's going to stop. Have you heard, you know, there's rumblings in Muskegon, they want to get something going. In Grand Rapids, there's been talk. So, you know, eventually we're probably going to see more legalized casinos and other forms of gambling right around us. Another tidbit, slots are the highest grossing thing on a casino floor. Interesting, huh? Gambling in Michigan, we have all of these types of gambling. One to take note of is this charitable gaming and bingo. You can get a license from the state and they offer these. And they just have select places in all the, you know, there's one here in Holland where charitable organizations can use this facility to have like Texas Hold'em tournaments and different kind of gambling where people can go in and they can only gamble a certain amount. But still, it's very accessible. And we don't even really realize that they're there. Yeah. No, they're not going. They're getting worse and worse and worse. And the state is going to have to try to deal with that somehow, shape, or form. But I think they're trying to be ahead of it, but everything that I've heard in the conferences I've been to, we're not able to get ahead of the curve there. So whatever they try, there's more ways that they can get into our pockets and make it easier. Even young kids are gambling a lot on the internet. There's overseas sites that you can gamble on that they can't keep track of. So that's one of the areas that is going to get into making it accessible a lot greater than even casinos or anything else. It's the internet. That's a whole nother big topic. But they are trying to make it harder. Definitely. Okay. Michigan survey was done by David Hartman at Western Michigan University in 2006. And the numbers showed that back then 2% of Michigan residents currently had a gambling problem and 4% had a gambling problem sometime during their lifetime. Now it's between 2 and 3%. But over 300,000 Michigan residents over the age of 18 at that time had a gambling problem. So that comes to about 1 in 110 Michigan residents are probable pathological gamblers. And the rate in the city of Detroit is more because that's where the casinos have been the longest. And they have 3 of them, and then they got them in Windsor. So it doesn't take long for somebody in the Detroit area to get to a bunch of casinos. The definition of gambling: any betting or wagering for self or others, whether for money or not, no matter how slight or insignificant, where the outcome is uncertain or depends upon chance or skill, constitutes gambling. So the, how slight or insignificant. You know, a lot of people, I was thinking about this, you know, we have the term called a white lie. You know, it's not really a lie, it's just a little lie, so it doesn't really count. Well, I think a lot of us, you know, we're not spending our whole paycheck on gambling, so we're really not gambling. It's just, you know, but anything slight or insignificant that you're wagering or depends upon chance or skill is gambling, okay? And so probably a lot of us have done more gambling than we even think. Also, another way of looking at it is to risk money or something of value on the outcome of a game, contest, or event. Types of gambling all around the country, of course, casinos, cards, dice, roulette, slots. Like I said, slot machines are the biggest money makers. Video poker, lottery, and doesn't say scratch-offs here, but lottery, I see them as the same kind of a thing. In the late 70s, Michigan started lottery, and you remember how many lotteries were in 1 week, went off in 1 week back then? 1. And how many numbers did you have to hit? 3, right. And how many lottery games are there today? 12, right. And how many numbers on there? Lots. Okay. And of course the internet we just talked about a little bit, which we can't even keep up with all of the internet gaming that's going on. And it's so virtual. It's unbelievable. And Keno, I have a patient who has a lot of problems with the Keno. And now they're in the bars and everything. So you go, you sit at the bar, you drink, and you play Keno. I think it's every so many minutes a new Keno game goes on. And bingo is a big one too. Some people, you don't think of bingo as that bad of a thing, but a lot of people are going from one bingo to the next every day of the week, every night of the week. There's bingo going on during the day, during the evening, and you can get maybe $20 for one big. I forget what they call them now, but they're paper, and there's probably about 10 or 12 bingo cards on there, and then you can get 2 of them. So you can spend like $40, $50 a night, and if you do this 3, 4, 5 times a week, it adds up to a lot of money. Impact of compulsive gambling. Of course, insurmountable debts, loss of employment, legal battles, neglect or abuse, physical illness, divorce, mental health issues, isolation, shame and guilt, arrest or imprisonment, and then of course suicide is very high up there with problem gamblers. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a few minutes. One thing to note is that the term for, problem gambling has now been categorized in the DSM-5, which is the new diagnostical statistical manual of mental disorders. And it's been categorized now from an impulse control disorder, which they called pathological gambling. Now, in the middle of last year, the new diagnostic manual came out, DSM-5, and now it's moved it into the addiction disorder category, and it's the only behavioral addiction of its kind now, and it's clumped into the addiction category. So we see that as a very positive thing because it's seen now as an addiction like other addictions of substances that are on the list. And so we're hoping, as Peter and I were talking earlier, that later this year, we're going to see what insurances do with that, and if they're going to cover gambling disorder is what it's called now in the DSM-5. We're going to see if now insurances will start covering that as a bona fide addiction, just like they do other substance use disorders. So we'll see about that. But that's a major development there, and it makes it more mainstream. Types of gamblers. Of course, there's a social gambler, gambles for entertainment, but it's not a big part of their life. A serious social gambler, I like to call him a gambling nut. Somebody that's their biggest hobby, that's what they like to do a lot of the time. There's also professional gamblers, which are more and more young people out of college, dropping out of college because they see the glamorization of poker on cable TV. If you watch cable TV at all and you flip through the channels, you're going to see, they're filming all of those professional gambling tournaments, and some of the winners win a lot of money. And of course, a lot of them don't win a lot of money. But so there's those professional gamblers that make a profession out of it. Then there's the problem gambler, and then the gambling disorder would be would meet the criteria for DSM-5 gambling disorder. Here's a gambling continuum, and as you see over here, starts out, of course, no gambling, experimentation, recreational, and this is where I would put the social gambler right in here. And then as you start moving down the continuum and start to be in that risk area, that's the serious social gambler. And then at some point you cross this line to becoming a problem gambling and then into a gambling disorder. And it can, sometimes it doesn't have to take very long. Sometimes it's a gradual thing. I've had a lot of people say, yeah, I used to gamble in my 20s and 30s, but just the last couple of years, they moved from maybe here, all the way into here in just 2, 3, 4 months. So it can be something that comes on very quickly as well. There's phases of compulsive gambling. First of them is the winning phase. This is where an individual may have a big win. They're real excited about it. Gambling is something that is really fun at this point. They start to get preoccupied more with gambling, and it starts to affect their social and work life. Physiologically, they start getting a lot of excitement out of it, rapid heartbeat, other physical symptoms. But they're really enjoying it. And they're probably winning more than they're losing at this point. Then you go into the losing phase, where you're becoming more obsessed with it. You begin to have to borrow to pay your debts or to gamble more, legally or illegally. And here you're trying to win back more all at once what you lost last week, last night. Maybe it was $1,000, maybe it was $2,000. And now you're going, not because you're in the fun of winning, because you're trying to win what you've lost back. This is where you start to have personality changes, because now it's starting to bring stress upon you. Increasing carelessness about responsibilities at life and home. Then we get into the desperation phase, where now you're really starting to conflict. Your behavior is conflicting with your personal value system. You're acting uncharacteristic to yourself by maybe writing bad checks, taking money from the family. You know, I've heard of parents raiding their kids' piggy banks or their bank accounts to pay debts. You start doing things like that, and then you start rationalizing your gambling behavior and what you're doing. And when you're doing these things here, you rationalize it as being okay because you're just going to win it back again. Okay? And at this point is when suicidal thoughts may start to occur. And then there's the hopeless phase, where increased isolation, loss of support systems, feeling burned out. Then you start to realize, I may not ever win back my losses. And then this is where you become more and more vulnerable to use of substances, having emotional breakdown. And this is where suicidal thoughts intensify, and this is the phase where you might act on your suicidal thoughts. And this is where a lot of people commit suicide. Here's a nice chart of compulsive gambling and recovery. As you could see, you go through the stages. When you hit bottom, just like any addiction, and this is, I don't know if there's any people here who treat addictions, but this is much like the Jelinek chart that we've seen with substance addictions. But you get down here, And of course, if you get the help you need, you can come out of it, and you can move up back towards getting a life that's more worth living. And but, as Peter is going to tell you later, as we talked earlier today, the effects of some of the behaviors could last a lifetime. And so, why people gamble? Recreation, entertainment, relaxation, right? It's fun to gamble. Excitement. For some people, they just look that it's an attempt to make some money. To feel better, escape from feelings of loneliness, anxiety, depression, boredom. To feel important. And sometimes people gamble because they can't stop. Okay. There's two major types of gamblers. The first is action or skill gamblers. These are predominantly male. They're more competitive. They're playing the games such as blackjack, poker, or horse racing, stock market, or sports betting. They're very competitive. Escape or luck gambler tends to predominantly be female, preferring non-competitive gaming such as slot machines, lotteries, bingo, keno, or relatively non-competitive solitary games of chance. Of course, these are generalizations that usually hold true, but not exclusively. So, as I said, action skill gamblers, they enjoy the competitiveness of the gaming. Okay, they're very outgoing. Action or skill gamblers have an earlier onset to problem gamblers. They like to be the center of attention. They have a low frustration tolerance, poor coping and intimacy skills. They tend to be more self-absorbed or narcissistic. They tend to deny their problems and stuff them in. There is some correlation to action or skill gamblers and attention deficit problems as well. Escape or luck gamblers, there's a later onset. They tend to be more introverted, self-critical, passive in their personality, and they have a high frustration tolerance. And they have poor assertiveness skills, low self-image. They tend to have more relationship problems, and often they are abuse victims, and often are more female. Problem gamblers have a high incidence of co-occurring disorders, which means that besides the problem gambling, there's another major issue going on in their life, like an alcohol use disorder. This one study showed 73% of all pathological gamblers had an alcohol use disorder. Okay, when you're at the casino, what's flowing a lot around you? What are they bringing out to you all the time? Alcohol, right? But an alcohol use disorder is very highly correlated with a gambling problem. Drug use, nicotine, there's a high correlation to nicotine use and problem gambling. Also mood disorders, anxiety disorders, personality disorder, and 15 to 20% of problem gamblers attempt suicide. And that's higher than substance addictions. Some real interesting findings. We're talking about problem gambling being moved over to an addiction. And this is one of the reasons why. Because the action in our brain of gambling mimics the same neural pathways that other addictions of substances utilize, and that's serotonin and dopamine. So in a problem gambler, the same effect is going on inside their brain and inside these neurotransmitters as is with substances of abuse, like alcohol and drugs. So serotonin is involved in the inhibition of behavior. So it helps us to know when we shouldn't do something that might be bad for us, okay? And that's in the frontal part of our brain, our executive function. But also the dopamine is involved, the dopamine pathway is involved in reward-seeking behavior. So these things are getting lit up as you're gambling, as you're on the floor or whatever gambling you're doing, just as if you were ingesting something, a substance that was getting you high and causing that to happen inside your body. So in a lot of ways, even though it's not ingested, problem gambling, compulsive gambling is causing a lot of neurological things to happen inside your body. And I think a lot of people aren't really aware of this. And that's why it's so addicting. Because you got all of these things going on, and now your body is saying, I want more of that, I want more of it, just like a drug. What are some risk factors for gambling? Well, of course, time and easy access, having few interests besides gambling, mistaken beliefs about the odds of winning, not monitoring gambling wins and losses, think there's a system or a skill to beat the house. A lot of distorted thinking goes on in the mind of a problem gambler. Okay, a lot of cognitive distortions go on where they really think that they found a way to beat the house. Finances is a risk factor. If you score a big win, let's say a month's salary or more, that's a risk factor because now you think that that can happen again, and that keeps you going back. Personal traits like having an impulsive personality, tying your self-esteem to gambling wins or losses, using gambling as a way to escape problems. That's a huge, huge issue. Also family history. If you started to gamble as a child or teen, that's a risk factor. A family history of mental illness, substance abuse, and gambling, abuse or trauma in your background, or a recent life change like retirement, job loss, divorce, etc. This is a huge risk factor. I've seen a lot of people who have gone through those things, a lot of retired people that have recently become widowed, start gambling to compulsive amounts, and then they never had a problem before that. There's gender differences. Women gamble to escape, usually, unpleasant situations. Men tend to gamble for competition and the excitement of it. The progression of problem gambling is usually shorter for women than men, and the age of onset is earlier for men and later for women. But this is the interesting thing, that women are catching up with men in gambling numbers and gambling problems. And right now, it's getting near to be even. Age. This is a whole seminar in itself. But senior citizens are the, I think, most major target of the gambling markets. They account for a substantial portion of money spent in gambling in Michigan. And they're more vulnerable due to the changes and losses at this time of life, and they gamble to escape boredom and for excitement and to escape reality. Very, very vulnerable population. Youth, teens are 4 times more likely to become problem gamblers because of the development in their brain. They're just more susceptible to any kind of addiction. And gambling, because now it's on the internet and there's so many internet-based games that you can play even not for money, and you get socialized to winning, even though you're not winning money. In their brain, they're starting to get that brain stuff going on, even though it's not for money, but just getting a win and feeling good. Yeah, the younger, the more, and we know this from addiction just straight. The younger somebody starts drinking, the percentage of of them having a problem as an adult just goes up tenfold. So, with youth today, boredom, they enjoy competition, poor self-esteem, peer pressure are things. And then, of course, the online gaming, betting, sports betting that goes on around in youth is very big. And they see a lot on cable TV, the coverage of card games, seeing their parents and other adults gaming, all contributes to the possibility of having a problem. I'm going to skip that. So, what do we need to do as clinicians? Remember to ask the questions. Do you gamble? I mean, it's a simple question. Do you go to the casino? Do you play lottery? Do you buy scratch-offs? Do you go to bingo? Do you play numbers? Participate in sports betting? How often and for what duration? These are simple questions, but usually when they come into either a primary care or a mental health setting, these questions are never answered. Have any of these activities ever caused you any problems? It would be the follow-up question. And you could begin to see there might be some correlation to their physical health problems or what they're presenting in a mental health clinic. And we have to remember that it's a hidden addiction. You know, you can't smell it, you can't see it like you can see other addictions. So we have to get better at assessing, just asking the right questions. This is a handout that you probably already have from the back here, but these are Gambler Anonymous 20 questions. This is a good place to start on answering these questions about yourself or a loved one that can tell you if there's a possibility of having a gambling problem. Individuals with active gambling problems often seek help not for their gambling, but for related symptoms such as depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, functional problems, relationships, job. So we really need to look at some of these underlying things. That's what they're coming in and presenting with. They're not coming in making appointments because I have a gambling problem. Now, the type of people I tend to see are the ones that are at the casino or they've hit bottom and they're really at the bottom in their desperation phase. But often they're going to primary care doctors. They might be seeing, I've seen people who had been in therapy for years and that was never addressed. So, or they may not conceptualize gambling as part of their problem, because you have to remember that in a problem gambler's mind, they have all these cognitive distortions going on, and they think that their problem can be solved by gambling, rather than it's causing me all my problems. So they don't really think that gambling is why they're feeling so sick and so tired, or they're so depressed, or they're suicidal, or they can't sleep at night. And this is another handout we have. Gambling comparison to other addictions. There definitely are some differences. It's less apparent. No substance is ingested. The central focus is on money. Irrational belief about luck. And so there are a lot of differences, but there are a lot of similarities with other addictions. And that's why I think they moved it into the addiction category in the DSM-5. So you can look at that, and wanted to make everybody aware that people can be banned from the casinos. In Detroit, it's called the Dissociated Persons List, and it's run through the state. It's in law. So if you're working with somebody or know somebody, they can go to one of the Detroit casinos and get banned, and it's a lifelong ban. But you can also go to the Indian casinos and voluntarily ask to be banned as well. I think most of them will do that. There's one or two that are that I know of, I can't think of them off the top of my head, that won't do that. But most of the Indian casinos will do that. And so I've had several people who have gone around to the 5 or 6 casinos that are closer to us and banned themselves for each one. And then it makes it illegal to set foot on their property. They can call the police and you get arrested. So no, but they got cameras. They can identify you. They know who you are. You start gambling, they track everything. Take your picture. Yeah. Yeah. They know more about you than you think. Right? Wouldn't some of you say? Yeah. They even, I can tell you, they have like case managers there that are assigned to people who gamble a certain amount of money. They'll call you. We haven't seen you in the last week. Where have you been? We have a free meal for you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you'll get the call. Yeah. Now, this is an interesting one. How to gamble safely. If you abide by this gambling safety checklist, you probably won't ever have a problem. Okay. So I got the handout there. Look it over. But you definitely don't want to, you want to control the things that you do and how you gamble, where you gamble, when you gamble, who you're with. Don't drink alcohol while you gamble. Make sure to take breaks, eat enough food. These are things that people who have problems gambling don't do these things here. So these are protective things. If you are going to gamble, you should use these controls. Okay, just to wrap up here, Michigan Problem Gambling Hotline, and the information back there has the number to call. They will refer you to me if I'm the closest person in the area. Also, people can walk in a clinic where a panel provider is located, and then we can get them in the system through that. And you don't have to have insurance coverage. It's free up to 16 sessions a year, and there's 6 sessions for family members to get. So 16 a year, yeah. 6 for a family. So, but if you call the hotline, they'll do the NODS assessment, and if you meet the criteria, which most people will call meet the criteria, then they'll refer you to the closest GA meeting, and then they'll refer you to the closest gambling panel provider, like myself. And I mentioned all of these things. So, and then there's handouts on resources. I have websites, and then reading material. I meant to put my email address up there, but if anybody has any questions or whatever, just feel free to call me. I'll try to get back with you. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Peter, and then when he's done, we'll have some questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Pete Harrington. I want to thank Mark and Holland Hospital for having me over here tonight. This is indeed a pleasure for me. I hope I can provide something that Mark did a wonderful presentation for you there. I can give you some of the, I'm a problem gambler. I'm currently in GA. I do speaking engagements. I'm a peer counselor, and I run a program for Gamblers Anonymous at the Veterans Hospital in Detroit, Michigan. I guess I'm going to, we have an abbreviated time here, but I'm willing to stay as long as you have questions, I'm willing to stay. So I mean, after the presentation, if you'd like to stay and ask me questions, and again, I have no embarrassment, so you can ask me anything that you like to. I sort of buck some of these trends, as you're going to see on the program that Mark gave you. I didn't start gambling until my 30s. I was born in New York, and I was raised in essentially a grandparents' environment. My mom and dad died when I was young. They raised me. They sent me to boarding school. I have none of the known history that some of the other people might have. But there was no abuse in my household. There was no other addictions that I know of. I mean, I don't know about my dad because I didn't know any of his family. I have always been a risk taker. I mean, from my early days, I've played sports, and if it involved breaking a bone or getting concussion, that's what I wanted to be doing, okay? Football, lacrosse, hockey, I hold 2 black belts. So I mean, none of this was, taking a risk was never an aversion to me. Initially, I was a decent student. I got through high school and my family wanted me to go to college, but I said no, college isn't for me. I'm not ready for more school at this time. I just want to get out. And you know, I was, after my grandparents got too old, I was sent over to my uncle and aunt. They had 4 kids of their own, and I felt I was really just kind of, you know, getting on everybody's nerves there. I was 18, time to move on. I joined the service, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it immensely. Went into special operations, even loved it even more. And then after my stint in the military, I got out, and I decided, hey, at that time they had the GI Bill. I don't know what it is now, but when I was getting out, they gave you 5 years to complete a program of schooling. You could do anything that you wanted to within that 5 years. So getting out of high school with no college, I said, hey, what can I do? And I said, let me think about being a lawyer. So I finished Michigan in 2 years. Then I went to law school for the other 3 years and got my JD, and I practiced law. Initially, I worked for an insurance company. I worked for an insurance company because I wanted to do trial work. I thought that would be the most exciting type of work for a lawyer. I didn't want to be doing wills and estates and trusts and stuff like that. I wanted to be in front of a courtroom, and I wanted to argue, and that's just what I wanted to do. It was in my nature to do that type of thing. After working for the insurance company for several years, I decided to go out on my own. And because the insurance company was wonderful to me. Most trial people get maybe 4 or 5 trials a year. I was doing between 20 and 25 trials a year. And what I would do is I would take my files and I'd go around to all the other attorneys and I'd say, listen, I've got 10 cases here that can be settled. Why don't you take them, give me 3 or 4 of your cases that have to go to trial, and we'll switch. There were days when I was swearing in a jury on the top floor, running down to take a verdict on another floor in the courthouse. I mean, that's just the way I was. That's what I really enjoyed doing. When I decided to go out on my own, I stole my secretary from the insurance company, and we opened up and talk about impulse. You know, I mean, it was all done within a period of a month. We opened up our doors, and it was a room, much smaller than this. I mean, essentially, we had that table. If you look in the back, you'll see a table back there, and that's pretty much what we had to open it up our office. She sat at one end of the table, I sat at the other end of the table, and I had my son's Apple computer, okay? And that's what we utilized for our law office. We did good. We grew, and we started adding on more attorneys, more paralegals, more secretaries, and by the time we were all done, there must have been 12 attorneys. We had 12 secretaries. We had 12, I mean, we had a great firm going. And then one day, a friend of mine who I had a case with said, hey, Pete, I am going to go down to the casino after we have our pretrial. Why don't you come with me? We'll go to the buffet. We'll have lunch. Now, mind you, I had never been in a casino. I had never bought a lottery ticket. I had done absolutely nothing in regards of gambling, okay? Even though Atlantic City was only like an hour away from me when I was growing up, I had no desire to do it. So I said, okay. So I went down to the casino with him. I had $500, he had $500. And I started walking around the casino to see what I wanted to play. And I remember my very first thought of the casino was not much, okay? Because the Detroit casinos hadn't opened up yet. And it was Casino Windsor across the river. And they had been opened up for a while, but it was still one of the temporary casinos. And I remember standing in a tent. It was cold outside, and I remember standing in a tent waiting to get in. And we were standing there for like 25 minutes, you know? And they had a heater there, and I said, so far this isn't a lot of fun. I'm not having too much fun. But eventually we got in, and I started watching the games. And I couldn't understand craps. That wasn't for me. Roulette just blew my mind. I couldn't understand the odds or anything like that. And then I walked into the table games, and I saw a game called 21 or Blackjack. And I said, hey, I'm a college graduate. I can count to 21. I can do this game, okay? So I sat down, and I turned my $500 into $2,000 within a matter of an hour, hour and a half. And I said, boy, this is great. This is a lot of fun. And I met up with my friend, and he lost his $500. Okay, he lost his $500. So I had to buy lunch for us, and I did, because I had won. And as far as I know, he never went back to the casino. But within a week or two, I went back. I found some time to get back to the casino and sit back at my favorite blackjack table and win again. And I kept winning, and I kept winning, and I kept winning. And I noticed that, at least with blackjack, that the game had a history to it. If you watched the cards, you could pretty well tell what the next series or the series after that of the cards would be, meaning whether they're going to be high cards or low cards. And I figured this out all by myself, okay? And I thought, what a genius. I figured out this game. And then I happened to go to a bookstore, and I found 50 books on the topic of card counting. This was not an original thought that I had, okay? But at the time I thought it was. Yes, ma'am?
Was that before they switched to multiple decks?
You want to know whether the blackjack game I played had multiple decks in it? As far as I know, they've always had multiple decks in Windsor and Detroit. But I mean, it depends. You can get into a game that has 6 decks, or you can get a game that has 8 decks. I think at this time they had 6 decks. And I thought, you know, and that was good, thank you. And I just thought, hey, I'm a genius, you know? And I kept winning, and one of the nice things is that when I would get a paycheck, the check would go to my wife. The paycheck would go to my wife. And if I ever needed anything, you know, I had to ask. I said, hey, can I have some money? And she'd always say yes, but the feeling of having to go and saying, can I have something, just never really sat right with me. We had one credit card, and if I had to go out of town for something or a trial or something like that, I could present that, you know, and get some cash or whatever else I needed. But essentially, if I needed some spending money, I had to go to my wife to do it. But that was the way our family was run, and that was fine with me. But this was nice, and I was getting $1,000, $500, $1,500 of cash the wife never had to know about, okay? This gave me some independence, I thought. And I thoroughly enjoyed that independence. I never told her. And I got to tell you something. At this time, I'm not trying to boast, okay? I was a very nice guy. For being an attorney, I was a nice guy. I mean, I did pro bono work. I had my other attorneys do pro bono work, which means that we would take cases and we wouldn't charge money for people that couldn't afford to do it. We made our money on personal injury type cases, but I mean, if there was a housing issue or landlord tenant, I mean, we would do that kind of work for free and not expect any money. And that's not all. I was not a heavily religious person, but I did go to church, raised my boys in the faith, and I mean, I gave money to the church, okay? Willingly, lovingly, I gave it to the church. As things progressed, I started having a personality change. I began kiting, and I mean, I wasn't winning all the time, but I mean, I was winning for the most part. But when I started, I was playing, and for those of you that know the casino chips, I was playing the red chips and the green chips, $5 and $25 chips. Okay, that's when I started out. And as time went by, I said, hey, look what I can do with $500. I can turn that into $1,500 like that. What a great thing that is. What happens if I go to the next level of chip? What happens if I go to the black chip, you know? So I said, that'd be $5,000 instead of $1,000. That's what I'll do. I'll play the black chip. And I did that for a while, and then I got bored with that. And I said, geez, those purple chips, they look inviting too, don't they? Purple are $500. Started bidding the $500. $500 a chip, yeah, purple.
No, the black are 100.
The black is 100, yeah. The chip color, it goes from red, $5, green, $25, black, $100, Barney's or purple, $500, and then it goes to orange, which is $1,000, gray, which is $5,000, and then gold, which is $25,000. And as the progression went, so did my betting strategies, okay? Things you got to realize about the casinos is, number one, even though you might go in and they have a table limit set, if you are a good enough customer, they are happy to raise the limit for you, okay? So if you're sitting at a table that has $100 to $2,000, you can say, hey, you know, I'm here to play, let's play some cards. let's raise the limit to $5,000 or $10,000, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. Mr. H, you're a wonderful customer. What do you want? No limit for you, Mr. H. Whatever you want, you got, okay? And that's how they get you. And the other way is you're talking about case managers. I call them the devil. They're casino hosts, okay? And what a casino host will do is he is assigned to you. And as you play, they're making all sorts of notations down on how you're playing, where you're playing, how much you're betting. And at some point in time, they want to make sure that you're coming back to their casino, okay? So what they'll do is that they'll give you what's called a comp. And a comp can be anything from a buffet, okay, to drinks, to cigarettes, to hotel rooms, to cars, to vacations, to first-class tickets. One of the biggest comps I had was a $40,000 wedding party that I brought from Detroit to Vegas. The casino paid $40,000, didn't charge me a cent, okay, because they wanted me in to play blackjack with them, okay? That's towards the end, okay, that's towards the end. And the reason that they're doing that is that, number one, it's deductible for them. Two, it's player development. Player development means that we give you the best stuff. You come to us and come to us only, okay? And you think they're your best friends. They call you, they send you birthday cards, they give you whatever you want. Now in Detroit, they cannot by law give you free cigarettes or alcohol. They do that in Vegas, but in Detroit, they were giving me free cigarettes. I was getting 3 cartons a day, and I went from smoking a couple of cigarettes a day to smoking 3 packs a day because I was getting 3 cartons. And what would I do with those cartons? I'd pass them out. What would I do with the hockey tickets I was getting? I'd pass them out because I didn't want to go. Whatever was available was what I wanted, okay? I had leases for cars. I had appliances for the house. I had, you name it, I had it, okay? That's how they do it. That's how they did me anyway. They hooked me in. And during this period of time, I had a personality change. And the reason that I know that is that my wife gave me 2 beautiful sons who I love and just worshiped. And I had the nerve to tell this woman one time, I came home and she said to me, she said, you know, we have 3 dogs. And she said, Pete, the dogs are pooping in the backyard. Can you go take care of that? And I mean, I looked at her dead in the eye and I said, do you know who I am and what I've done for this family? That's what I said to my wife, who I loved. And do you know what she said to me? She said, I know exactly who you are, and one of the things you do for this family is you pick up dog poop. Now get out there and take care of it. That was my wife. She grounded me, and I needed that more than anything in the world, because without that, I was just a kite flying out of control, okay? When you're gambling and you get to a point where you think you're getting everything taken care of, you feel entitled, okay? You feel entitled, and that can lead to other bad conduct, whether it be adultery, whether it be staying out all night, whether it be co-addictions with other drugs. I mean, the spectrum is just so broad. If you're feeling entitled, you think you can do it, you try to get away with it. We're running a little bit over, but one of the ways that you try to get, what I've done is inexcusable. What I did is that I used to kite checks. Kiting check is that I'd had 2 accounts, one at one bank, one at another bank. And I'd write out a check for $25,000, $30,000, cash it, or get a certified check at one of my banks. And I would take that and I'd draw it on the other bank, okay? I draw it on the other bank. That's important because if you draw it on the bank, they say you don't have enough money, but if you draw it on the other bank, they'll give you the money for it. And I would take that check, I would cash it at the casino, okay? And then if I won, which I hopefully I would do, I'd be able to run back to the bank, deposit that money, okay? So when the check got there, it looked like it was cleared and I had the money all the time. That's called kiting a check. I started developing that. The only thing that I could say is that If I would have lost, what I could have done is I could have dipped into savings and, I could have taken out some equity I mean, the things I did is, it's just unreal. Just unreal. My downfall happened one day when I went to one of the local casinos here in Detroit, and I had $200,000 in chips. I had $100,000 in cash, and I sat down at a table, and I wanted to play some blackjack. Okay, so we started playing, and about an hour, I asked the pit boss. I said, "Where am I?" And they said, "Mr. H, you're $180,000 up." And I said, "That's great." I said, "When I get to $200,000, you let me know, because I'm going to quit for the morning, and I'll come back in the afternoon and play some more." Okay, that is the last thing I remember. Now, I want you to remember, when I started out gambling, I started out once every 35 years. Okay, when I ended my run, I was gambling three times a day, 7 days a week. 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. Okay, I revolved my whole life around ways I could get to a casino, whether it be here, over at whatever the casino was, I do. I mean, I managed my whole life. I lost so much opportunity there, because when you do that, when you take away the important things of your life, such as family, friends, job, okay, and replace it with other gamblers, casinos, it's just not worth it. So what happens is I'm up 180,000. I had started out with 300,000, so I got close to $500,000 now, right? And I just forget. I don't know what's going on. It's called a brownout with gamblers. Alcoholics have blackouts. We have brownouts. The next thing I know is the next morning I'm getting a call from the casino, and they're asking me, "Mr. H, I guess you don't know this, but how are you going to take care of these checks that you wrote?" And I said, "What checks?" They said, "Well, you owe us a little bit of money here." And I said, "Oh, well, okay." I said, "How much?" I thought it was going to be like, 100,000. It was going to hurt, but I could have done that, okay? $2.1 million in bad checks to the casino. 2.1 million. I'm a working guy. My name's not Rockefeller. I don't have $2.1 million. I've already gone through all my stocks. I've taken out my 401k. From one credit card a month, I went to 25 credit cards a month, okay? My wife didn't know anything about those. So 24 credit cards in my pocket, and I took all the cash advances out on them, okay? I remortgaged my house, which had been paid off. I got a loan on my cottage, which was paid off. And I took my cars, which were paid off, and got secondhand loans, what do you call secondhand loans or used car loans on those, okay? All without my family's knowledge, because I didn't want to bother them with such details. I'll take care of this myself. Well, I took care of it to the point where I not only lost I lost my house, my cottage, my kids, my wife, and I think my wife would have stayed with me, but for the other conduct that I had engaged in, okay? Which was just unspeakable. I mean, I just, again, it was just something that was horrid, and I don't deserve, any special treatment from her. She was a godsend, but, So that's where it stands. Couldn't pay back the $2.1 million.
How old were you at that point? You started at 35.
I started at maybe 32, 33. I had gambled for about 25 years, so this puts me in my mid-50s now, okay? I had practiced for about 30 years, and now that I can't pay back the $2.1 million, I remember this running through my head. We're friends. We'll work this out. This is my home-based casino, Well, I get a letter from the state police saying, "Hey, you're being charged with a felony. Come on down and turn yourself in." So I went down and turned myself in, okay? I was put into an orange jumpsuit. I was put into a cage. I was handcuffed. I went before a judge I had practiced before for 25 years, and she looked at me and thought this was all a joke. And she said, "What are you doing here, Pete?" And they read the charges, and she said, really? Really? So eventually I went around and pled guilty. She realized that I was not a threat to society, that I wasn't going to go out and rob banks or do anything like that. She put me on 5 years probation, okay? And she gave me a chance. And she said, but part of the conditions were, if I see you at a casino, if I see you anywhere, you know, gambling, buying a lottery ticket, you're going to jail for 10 years, okay? I mean, she made it very clear that I'm on a short leash, okay? So that's what happened. And I remember going to the Bar Association, because when you're a practicing attorney, you have a license. And I remember going up there and handing them my license, and I mean, it was a big deal. They stamped revoked on it. And I remember getting into the elevator, and up until this point in time, suicide had never entered my head, okay? I never thought about it. I mean, it was all just something that this is just such a misunderstanding. My life is golden. I mean, I can find a way out of this, blah, blah, blah. And I remember getting to the elevator after them ripping up my license and putting revoked on it, and going down the elevator, and just the word enough just crossed before my eyes. And I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. Enough of gambling, but I remember, this is in Detroit, and I remember there's a busy street there. And I remember opening the doors and walking to the street, and I said to myself, don't look, get hit by a car, maybe your family can get something if you're dead. And I walked into the street, okay, didn't look. And I remember getting to the other side and saying, you're not even lucky enough to get hit by a car, you know? And that was the end to my gambling. I dreamed, I couldn't sleep. If I did fall asleep, I would dream of cards. And I didn't have enough money to do anything. I mean, I was sleeping in the park for like 2 weeks, and then my sons came out and got me, and they said, Dad, Mom says you can come back to the house, but you can't have any money. And I said, okay. So I turned to the veterans, and the veterans got me into a program. They got me into the only program, if you saw some of the material there, you saw the name of Dr. Custer, okay? Dr. Custer is, let me genuflect again. He is like the godsend to the veterans when it comes to the gambling program. He has the only gambling program, he initiated the only gambling program in the state of Michigan, in the nation, and it's in Cleveland, Ohio, okay? Now it's being run by a wonderful doctor. Her name is Heather Chapman, and but you're even supposed to pay like $1,000 or $1,500 for a 30-day program. I didn't have anything. She heard my story, and she said, get over here now, okay? They paid for me to get on a bus, get down there. They had 2 MPs come, and they took me, and I was in the program, okay? That's how much, and I never forget that. They had me into the program. And after I had an opportunity, it's a 30-day program. After I had the opportunity, I got out, I came back, gamble-free, started a GA program at the veterans. I wanted to repay them. Got into that program with HMSA. Okay, at the time it was through the NSO, but now it's through HMSA. Wonderful woman, Lori Mello, runs the program. What I wanted to be a suicide counselor with them, but she says, you know, you don't have the education for a suicide counselor, but why don't you join our speakers bureau? Which I said, great, I'd love to. Met Mark through the treatment, because I'm going to become a counselor. I'm a peer counselor now, and that's it in a nutshell, folks. I mean, I'm sorry I kept you here an extra 15 minutes, but like my promise is good. If you have any questions, throw them at me. If we have to close, I'm willing to stay afterwards.
How long have you been clean?
The question is how.
Repeat the question.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. How long have I been clean? 5 years, 19 days, but who's counting? You know? Yeah. You had a question, ma'am?
Oh, I just wondered what happened to the $2.5 million. Was that cleared for bankruptcy court?
No. I went down faithfully for 5 years and paid restitution of $20 a month, and I think I still owe a little bit left on that, but I'm no longer on probation for that, you know, because I completed my 5 years, and I mean, I can never, but it's a good point that you make, I can never own anything ever again. I can't own a house, because if I do, the casino will come and take it because they have a judgment against me. I can't own a car. Oh, they will come get them in a heartbeat. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. And deservedly so. The other thing I would have liked to talk to you about is the victims, okay? But again,
You can do that.
Okay. With these scenarios, who do you think the victim is in these particular cases?
Family?
I'm sorry?
Family?
The family is an excellent victim, yes. My employees, because after I lost my license, we had to shut down the firm. My clients, because now they came to me because of my reputation and that I could do a good job for them, but now they have to scurry to find somebody else to do their job, and they might not get as good of a lawyer. And I'm not saying that because I'm just saying because it's true, okay? My community, because now they don't have the taxes that I was paying before. I mean, I was paying a good percentage of my income in taxes. Now they don't get a penny from me, okay? Family, very important. My community, okay? Do I consider the casino a victim? No. Do I consider myself a victim? No. No, I engaged in it. I think there's some things that can be done to protect people, but that's not the, that might be some other date. We'll talk about that. Other questions? Oh, come on. I traveled all the way from Detroit to be here. Come on. Yes, ma'am. You have gambled for a long period of time. You feel that you're still at the recreational stage. The thing that I would urge you to do is take a look at the 20 questions that they have on the, Ernie, I think, Ernie has some of those. Take a look at them. If you answer yes to 7 of them or more, you might want to consider joining GA or looking at a program, okay? The thing that I have done since I have made my life totally transparent, okay? I don't do anything sneaky anymore. Whatever I do, I live in a glass house, okay? Because this way I can't sneak around and do stuff like I did before, In fact, remember when I was telling you about I was donating to my church, and I did that gladly? It got to the point where I would win big at the casino, okay? And I donate to the church. It was more of a bribe, okay? It wasn't done with love. It wasn't done it was done for, hey, God, hey, you like what's happening to your poor box here? Let me keep, I mean, that's the kind of thinking that you have. A lot of things can happen like that. Okay, if cravings and urges for gamblers after 5 years of sobriety. Oh yeah, I mean, I still get them. There are always going to be triggers that an argument. That's something, or like a bill that's kind of late being paid. That's a trigger for me. I'm not worried about people that have the urges. I'm worried about the ones that can't control the urge with the trigger, okay? So you have the trigger, what do you do, okay? Find something else, because that bill's going to be there, and if I scrape up my pop bottles and go to the store and go down there with $200-300, okay, and I lose that, now I owe that bill, plus I've taken a big chunk out of my family budget, okay? The question is, what does it mean to have an increased heartbeat when you're gambling in a casino? Does it mean that you're becoming addicted, okay? It means that you're getting involved in a rush type situation. Whether you're winning or losing, I think the heartbeat's you're going to have an impact on your heartbeat, okay? Mark would probably be better to explain that, okay? But go ahead.
Yeah, if you're having those physical types of symptoms, you're already moving from just a regular social gambler to something that's beyond a serious social gambler, and maybe crossing over into the problem gambling side of things. So, I always tell people, is it worth the risk? Is it worth the risk? What are you getting out of it? What are you risking by continuing to put yourself in a situation that might be progressive here, And, I have a patient who told me last week, if you don't have the money to lose, you can't play, and this is something that he came up with. If you don't have the money, if you don't have money to lose, you don't have money to play. So, you have to look at that side of things. But, and I think going to GA and sitting down and talking with some people in GA who have been through these things, because they probably had been or at the place where you're at.
One of the things I can also add to that is if you can and you think you're going towards it, stop. Get help. Because you know, even though I'm just a peer counselor, I don't have the education or experience that Mark has. One of the most frightening things that has happened to me is that I've been working with a person who came in and had not put into you know, it was still in the planning stages. Okay, they had not done anything to make it happen, but their plan was to take out insurance policies, kill the spouse, take that money, and go gamble with, because with that kind of money, they could win. Again, we're working some, you know, we're working some very dangerous areas there, okay? And, you know, thankfully, the person's now 6 months without gambling, so that I think that's great, you know. GA is a wonderful program. It's probably saved my life and countless of others. GA will take you in. They will not make judgments on you. You can sit down. You can talk about issues that you're having on a daily, monthly, whatever basis that they are. You can get a sponsor, and you can work the program on a one-on-one basis with that sponsor. That helps out dramatically. I mean, when you have questions, I have called people at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've been called at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the thing that, because I'm GA, I will answer that phone, and I will take as long as it takes to answer these people's questions, calm them down, and hopefully keep them out of a casino or a gambling situation. Wonderful program. I wish we had more people like Ernie here, and more GA, and you know, but we work with what we got. That's all we can do. Yes.
Two questions.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, your question is what could someone have done or said to me before it got that bad? The answer to that is I was my own person. I knew better. I wasn't listening to anybody. And I mean, it's all in the mental, all in the mental aspects. You know, this can be overcome tomorrow. I mean, I've walked out with a casino with $500,000 that I've won, you know, and I mean, for somebody to tell me, why don't you just stop? You know, no, it ain't gonna, no. The bottom line was the denial thing of it. My wife one time hopped in the car with me, and she gave me an ultimatum. She said, Pete, you can go down to the dissociated persons of the state police and sign yourself out of this casino, or you can take me to the courthouse where I'm going to file these divorce papers. Finally, something that sunk in on me, right? Well, we got in the car, and I raced downtown, and I told her, go file your divorce on the second floor. You know, that's nothing, nothing. When somebody, but if that maybe have happened earlier on, you know, but this is too late at that time.
A brownout. You know, people like Pete and other people I've seen have talked about brownouts. You're in a stupor. Like I had somebody who was a brittle diabetic, had a lot of health problems, and she would go for hours and not even be aware of what happened. On her way home, you know, and so to talk about like you're going through the motions, but you're not really aware of what you're doing, and you don't remember, just like a blackout with the, so the process that's in the brain that's going on when you're having a blackout is going on chemically, you know, and it's yeah. Well, it's going through it's exciting those places in the brain, and they get to the and he calls it a saturation point. Yeah. You know, that. So, yeah. One more question, then we're probably going to close. I think that can be part of a brownout, not being aware of how much time you're there. You know, people, you know, they get into this where they're supposed to take their medicine, and they go way hours beyond taking their medicine. You know. It's just you're so focused and focused into what you're doing, you're not aware of any other needs that you have. So, well, it's time to end. Thank everybody for coming.